Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Self Led Besties Podcast. I'm Christine,
I'm Hallie.
And I'm David.
and we are the Self Led Besties. And you can be a bestie too.
Self-led besties, talking about our parts. Self-led besties, speaking from our hearts. Self-led besties.
We are going to continue this week with our experiments and kind of leading each other through experiences. If you missed last week, Hallie led us through an experiment or experience where we went through three different flows of receiving and giving compassion. And today, David's going to lead us through an experience where we pathways into self. And I'll pass the baton to you, David.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all here today, or good to be with you. And yeah, this is just a little exercise, not too dissimilar to the one Hallie did last week, about just ways, pathways where we can tune in, our parts can tune into self energy. And yeah, there's three different ways that I'm going to suggest, invite your parts to get curious about. The first one is presence, which just means be here now, be here in the present moment, which is easier said than done. And the second one is awareness, and that's just really what it says. It's that sense of being aware, even just the bare sense of being, that you know what is happening, that there's an experience happening right now. And then the third pathway is the qualities of self. And these are, I'm sure you may have heard if you're into IFS, the 8 C's: calm, clarity, curiosity, creativity, compassion, connectedness, courage, and confidence. Surprised I remembered that, but yeah. And yeah, what I'm gonna just lead you guys in, Hallie, Christine, and anyone listening, is simply exercises, experiments for your parts. There's no pressure for your parts to do these exercises. They can listen and maybe come back at a later date. It's all just an invitation. See if they can get curious, see if they, yeah, see if they can tune into maybe some qualities of self or some aspects of self energy. I know for my parts that's always very, very helpful. For these exercises, just make sure you support yourselves in whatever way makes sense. You want to write, that would be great. And if you don't want to write, that's equally great. Um, yeah. So, without further ado, we can maybe start with the first exercise, the first experiment. And this one is called One Breath. Yeah, so in my own system, I'm noticing some parts with a bit of anxious energy, some parts not used to leading meditations. Just asking them to relax, rest back a little bit. Maybe they can get curious about the breath. Yeah. And so it feels, see if you can close your eyes or keep them open, whatever feels right. Maybe just breathe in and breathe out. Feel the chest rising, and feel the chest falling. And see if you can be aware for the full duration of a single breath. Breath in, breath out. I'm just going to invite your parts to notice a couple of things. The first is notice how the last breath no longer exists. Notice also how the next breath does not yet exist. And see if they can notice how there is only ever one breath. Maybe we can get curious, how does it feel to notice that? And then however they feel, whatever they think makes sense. Maybe your parts can also notice how, on some level, the body naturally knows that there is only one breath at a time. And it's also natural for sometimes our parts to forget that there's one breath at a time. And that's okay. They're working hard, doing jobs that are important. Maybe get curious with your parts how it feels like to remember what the body already knows. And that sense of just one breath, forever renewing, in just this moment, eternally unfolding. Yeah, and if it feels right, you can open the eyes. Maybe thank your parts for trying that out. I'm curious what that experience is like for them. You can maybe take the idea of presence as a pathway to self a little bit further with a second experiment, a second exercise. And it's a little bit different than the last one, but same sort of idea. And as always, maybe ask your parts for permission if they're open to past, future, and present experiment. It will involve closing and opening the eyes several times. And then if they're willing, that's great. And if they're not willing, again, that's great too. They make sense. And then again, if it feels safe for your parts and they're willing to try the experiment, you just close your eyes. And maybe again, just tune into the breath. Bring to mind something you really enjoyed in the past, some really fun activity. It can just be a sense of the memory or images about it. And then, if it feels okay, open your eyes and just with a gentle curiosity, ask, did you leave the present? And there's no right or wrong answer. And then again, if it feels okay, close the eyes and visualize or imagine something that you're really looking forward to. It could be anything, something small, something big. And again, if it feels right, open your eyes. And again, no right or wrong answer, gentle curiosity. Did you leave the present moment? No right or wrong answer. And when it feels right, close your eyes again. And this time, maybe analyze something that your parts feel you could have improved upon. Or maybe a problem that they're working out in the past. And again, when it feels right, open your eyes. Same question as before. Gentle curiosity. Did you leave the present moment? The now. And finally, close your eyes one more time. That feels okay. Maybe plan something in the future that might be challenging or work through something that may be difficult. Again, final time, just open the eyes, same gentle curiosity. Did you leave the present? And final two questions for your parts. And again, like the ones before, there really isn't a right or wrong answer. Different parts will have different perspectives. The first question is, have you ever left the present moment? And the second question, will you ever leave the present moment? Yeah, and for me, thank your parts for taking part in the first pathway to self energy. That was presence, mindful presence. And you're welcome to pause, maybe reflect or take a break or write what came up for you before we move on to the next pathway. The next pathway is called awareness. And awareness is a word that means many things. And in this context, it's awareness that I suppose what I'm going to try to point towards in these exercises is awareness is the bare sense of knowing, or just the sense of there's something that it's like to be me right now. And by tuning into awareness, we can tune into self energy, broaden our perspective. Our parts can notice that there's a presence, a knowing that's vast, spacious, still. And like before, this is just invitation only, nothing your parts have to do, just an experiment, an exercise, if they're curious. And the first exercise or experiment is called awareness inquiry. And this is almost approaching awareness from the sense of a beginner's mind, the questions may seem obvious, and they will be to some parts, but see if your parts would be open to just almost re examining what awareness is and what it isn't. And for this exercise, you can keep your eyes open. That feels okay. And I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. And again, like before, there's truly no wrong or right answer. It's whatever your experience is in that moment. So just maybe take that deep breath, rest into your chair. And the first question is, what is awareness? Is awareness just what you can see? Hmm, maybe get curious. What about the sensations in your eyes? Hmm, is awareness almost inside your head? And then again, curious about the sensations in your body. Hmm, is awareness just your head, body, and sights in front of you? Then maybe get curious about the sounds and the space behind you. Is awareness just your head, body, sights, sounds, and space? And maybe get curious about the thoughts, feelings, emotions in the mind. Hmm, Final three questions. Again, remind your parts they can't get it wrong. How much effort does it take to be aware? Can you recall a time when you were not aware? And finally, can you stop being aware? Maybe take another deep breath. It's the end of the first part of the awareness exercise. And yeah, I'm curious what came up for your parts, what insights or questions they may have. And like with the presence pathway, maybe see if we can bring it a little bit further. Same sort of idea, maybe expanding and getting a little bit more curious. And again, maybe ask your parts if they're open to exploring awareness further, or if they'd rather take a break, that's okay too. So this, it's just again questions without a right or wrong answer. Just again seeing if your parts would be open to getting curious about your experience right now, what awareness is, what it isn't. And the first question is simple. How many objects can you see right now? It doesn't have to be a perfect adding up, just to get a great general sense. How many sounds can you hear, if any? How many facial sensations can you feel? Can you notice, strange as it may sound, any space almost between the facial sensations, or maybe in the head? And then see if you can shift awareness back to where we started with objects. Let's see if you can just let it rest. Let awareness rest in the visual field without focusing on anything, just a sense of the space in front of you. And get a sense, if possible, of how it feels to be aware of sights. And see if you can shift awareness from sights to sounds, almost from the eyes to the ears. And if it shifts back and forth or awareness goes to thoughts, that's okay too. Just gently bring it back if possible. Just noticing what it feels like when awareness shifts from sights to sounds. Mm, Seeing if it's possible as well to almost balance awareness between sights and sounds. Without any real agenda, just a open receiving of light, sound waves. Maybe remind any parts concerned that this is just an experiment. They can't get it wrong. Awareness will shift to thoughts and feelings, and that's okay. And see if they can just gently bring it back if possible. And finally, see what it's like just to be aware of physical sensations. No particular physical sensation, just the sense of the body, sensations in the head, the upper half, the lower half, a general cloud of sensations. Unlike sights and sounds, just a broad sense. And then see if it's possible to almost shift awareness to this space between the sensations, maybe even around the sensations, around the body. And again, notice what that shift feels like from being aware of the body, being aware of space, and remind all parts that there's no right or wrong way to do this. This is an experiment. See what happens, see what they notice. Mm, Just before we close the awareness pathway, see if parts would be open to almost, strange as it might sound, being aware of sights and sounds, sensations and spaciousness all at once. Sort of broad brushstrokes of awareness, not focusing on any one particular thing. Maybe get curious as well. How does that feel? And that's the end of the second pathway. You're very welcome to pause like before. You want to write down anything you noticed. Anything that came up for your parts. The final pathway is really tuning in and getting curious about the qualities of self, the qualities that you may have exhibited in the past. As I said before, these qualities are typically the 8 C's, but there are many others. And self energy isn't just coming from self as well. Parts have self energy, especially when unburdened. And it's just a sense of getting curious about how qualities of self have shown up in your life, and maybe in some ways that you mightn't have noticed. And this is an exercise that's a lot more simple, perhaps, than the previous two. All I'm going to do is ask you to recall maybe times in the past when you have exhibited a certain quality of self. Again, with no big agenda, just getting curious. And by tuning into times in the past when we've had a lot of self energy, it can sometimes bring up some self energy in the present. Mm, So, if you're ready, if your parts are willing, see if you can recall a time when you've been determined. Recall a time when you have been insightful. Recall a time when you have been disciplined. Recall a time when you have been principled. Recall a time when you have been inspirational or instructive to others. Maybe see if your parts can get curious about what they notice in the mind and the body, bringing these qualities into the mind, into awareness. What do they notice? Is there any shift? Mm, Recall maybe a time when you've been generous, Recall a time when you have been nurturing, kind. Recall a time when you've been accepting of others. Recall a time when you've been really supportive of others. Recall a time when you've been understanding or compassionate to others, or even yourself, your parts. And again, like before, see if your parts can just get curious. Do you notice any shifts in the mind, the body, any energy, lightness, openness? Whatever they notice is the right answer. And finally, see if your parts can recall a time when they've been silly or funny. And see if they can recall a time when they've been inventive. And see if you can recall a time when you've been expressive in any way. Recall a time when you've been observant. And finally, see if you can recall a time when you've been courageous or confident. Again, like before, see if parts notice any shifts in the mind, the body, in awareness, presence, energy, whatever comes up. And yeah, that's the end of the 3 pathways to self energy. And really thank your parts for showing up and taking part in whatever way they did. Um, it helps me sometimes in my life, or helps my parts just to remember even the basics of sense of presence, sense of awareness, and also just those qualities of self energy. When parts get so busy with their
Christine and Hallie
jobs,
are back.
they
Hello.
can sometimes forget, and it can be really
Hi.
helpful for them to
Hello.
know that they're not alone.
Good to see you again.
Okay,
Thank you, David.
thank you.
I feel so relaxed.
Oh, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
Hallie, do you want to go first this time, or what would you prefer?
If I could wait, that would probably be a little easier for my system right now. But yeah, I feel very
Okay,
relaxed. Are you okay going first?
sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I had so many different insights and different things, David. So thank you for that. I loved several things I loved about it was that you constantly allowed the parts to give consent about doing an exercise or not. And it was very like you continue to remind us like we can get permission from our parts to try this. It felt um like kind of like a gentle, playful, I love the word inquiry, right? Of just kind of like, is this true? Like, you know, um, and just kind of not challenging, but because it's very gentle, right? But having the parts expand and see that maybe the way that they're seeing it in like a really rigid or one way is not is not the only way or all of it. So I really liked that. Um, so I won't say everything because I wrote down a lot, but in the first one with presence, um, what was fascinating was when you would ask, like, did you ever leave the present? My answer every time was no, no, no. But what I realized was that when you had me go and think about something in the past that was kind of distressing or in the future that was distressing, that I guess that was the second part, but I had like adrenaline and like my nervous system started getting my muscles started getting tense, right? So I noticed that yes, I'm always in the present, but when I'm thinking about distressing things, it very much from the past or future, it affects me right now in my
Mm,
body. So I really
mm,
noticed the effect of that. And then I also really noticed the effect, like when the beginning, when you asked me to think of kind of a happy memory and something I'm anticipating coming up, my whole body was like in this rest and digest, like happy, relaxed, smiling state. So I never left the present moment, but I was so struck by how what I was thinking about past or future did affect me in the present. So that was really, really like it was so apparent. That was really interesting. Um, and then in the awareness, I really loved, you know, Brian or not Brian. Many people will talk about like the both and, right? Like instead of this either or kind of black and white thing of our parts, our self can understand the both and Brian will correct it and say, no, the all and, right? And so that's the experience that I had. What I loved is that you brought me into that experience when I was looking at this tree in front of me, hearing the noise from the road, aware of my body, aware of the space around my body, all at the same time. It was like, ooh, yeah, my awareness is vast. It can hold so many things at once. It doesn't just have to only be one. So that was, I really, really liked that. Um, and then let's see. So the last exercise was really interesting to me, and a part of me thought about censoring my experience, but I thought, no, it might help other people if they had a similar experience. So what was really fascinating to me was that several of the words you used, determined, disciplined, principled, even generous, kind, accepting, supportive, elicited very burdened parts for me. So the parts were kind of like that had been trained, like you must be, it was like burden parts that have these shoulds, right? You should be principled, you should be disciplined, you should be generous, you should be kind and nurturing. And so it was really fascinating to notice that. Um, and then some of the words though, like you said at one point, or you can turn it toward your parts. And it was like, for me, like I have almost have to turn it toward my parts first, turn the all, the generous and nurturing and accepting, toward all of those supportive of my parts. And then it can naturally overflow to other people. But for some reason, because of my domestication and history, like turning that toward other people was always a performance. It wasn't actually coming from flow. So it was interesting to notice that. But I noticed that when like some of them later, like being inventive and creative and expressive and um, courageous and confident, I was like, ooh, I'm able to do that when I feel secure inside, when like all my parts feel held by my own self. It's like all those things naturally flow outward. And so I don't know, again, I've gotten into this discussion with other people before where they feel like their first step is actually like self energy outward toward other people. But in my experience, so everybody can be different. I'm not discounting anyone else's experience, but in my experience, it's like my parts have to experience that first, and then it naturally flows out to other people. So it was just fascinating that when I framed it as a time when I did that for other people, it actually felt burdened in my system. But when I turned it toward my own parts first, then it was like, oh yeah, that's self energy. And then the outer flows naturally. So yeah, but it's a really interesting to notice all that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. That was, yeah, it makes so much sense. When you said, I'll go back because I remember it. I'll start at the third exercise and then go to the. So when you
Yeah.
said about they were like disciplined and principled, and I was like, oh, maybe the parts of me wrote that or have a perception that self is disciplined, principled, or like it's so interesting to me of like the what parts of me wrote those qualities, and also disciplined can be burdened, but it can also be like I think there's a phrase called discipline or something, where it's like you love it, you love just doing. There's a sense of joy in it, and it just then what you said got me curious about like how one word could be burdened and unburdened. Yeah, but yeah, that's fascinating, and yeah, I really appreciated hearing about your experiences with presence, especially in that sense of how the body, brings up, time travels you, and then that juxtaposition of, oh wait, that can be a helpful disconfirming experience for our parts, but also wanted to like validate that that is real. And yeah, and the awareness as well, that sense of expansiveness. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. There was one other thing I was going to say when you started talking about the qualities of self and how you can recall the past and bring it into the present. I had this aha of this connection of the first exercise
Mm,
of sometimes when we bring into our awareness, like times when our system felt really safe and expansive, it actually brings that state
mm,
into our awareness in the present
mm,
so that when we remember that self energy from the past, or like last week, bringing our future self into the present, we can access self in the present. So yeah, I love that.
Hallie, there's no pressure to share, but if anything came up for you, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, no, totally. Lots came up for me. And I haven't. I tried to sort of star things that I might bring up, but same. A lot of the things Christine experienced, I noticed and appreciated about like continuously checking in for consent and like reminding lots of you can't get it. Like there's no right or wrong, just we're really just noticing what these questions bring up. And I didn't feel a sense of being kind of pushed in one direction or another, like you're supposed to learn this from this activity. It was more like this is an experiment. That really came across. So just appreciating that first of all. And your voice, as we all know, is very relaxing and soothing. And you have a part that might feel uncomfortable with me saying that. For the listener, David is covering his face with his shirt, or was. I'm looking away, sorry. But well, that I know is true for my system and others, some others. So I just appreciated having that sort of period of time to sit in stillness and reflectiveness with your voice leading that, guiding that. So thank you. Um, and so, yeah, let's see. I mean, so one thing to note is that I'm sort of coming off and still kind of in like a big activation in my system. So I think it's interesting to do something like this. It definitely, I could probably wouldn't have been able to do it earlier today. And it feels like a good time to do it now in my system. And it's interesting to notice how parts just keep wanting to tell me about things that are coming up that have nothing to do with this. But it's sort of more interesting to notice it with this as the backdrop, because it kind of, that contrast is, it's like, okay, you are the one that wants my attention the most right now. Like it's really obvious. So there is just that too that would kind of bring me out of presence and back in and out. And um I'm just looking at what I wrote. So yeah, there is only ever one breath. Yeah, that the breath activity was really interesting. Um, I loved that. And a part of me thought, oh, that could be a fun thing to do with clients in the beginning of a session. I don't know. I just really appreciate, like, that felt, yeah, it was easy to sort of be in the present for my system with the breath as the um, still point or the thing to be aware of. Um, And I liked when you said parts remember what the body already knows. Um, I'm trying to remember what that meant. You said it's easy for our parts to forget about like that we're really only one breath at a time because they're working so hard. Um, oh, yeah, yeah. It's like the body knows we're only one breath at the time, but parts are more, I mean, they're in our body, but they're also like in the past and the future and thinking a lot. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, I just liked some of these phrases you used. Just one breath, forever renewing. Just this moment, eternally unfolding. I really appreciated that. Okay. Yeah, I just wrote, it's so interesting how parts that are replaying things, I had parts replaying things from earlier today, feel like that unlike breath, those things were done or said don't disappear. Because you were saying each breath disappears, like
Mm.
it's gone, like the past breath is gone. But parts are like, but the things I did or said earlier are never going to be gone. Like they happened and now they're like cemented, basically. So I just thought that was an interesting um, observation of how parts, yeah, they're just they think that there's more than just the present, basically. They're committed, some of them, to that. Um, um, I wasn't. I guess maybe I'll bring this up because maybe a listener could have been confused. But when you said you were asking us to come to recall an enjoyable memory, something looking forward to, something we were analyzing, that like happened, and then you said plan something, and I just wasn't sure what you meant by that.
Um, Maybe just something that you were planning. I don't know. Let me look at.
Well, I just didn't know if other people might be like, I didn't know what that one meant. Did you know what that one meant?
I interpreted it like something I'm anticipating that I'm looking forward to.
Okay, because well, David already said looking forward to, and my parts are just very literal. They're like, I don't know what that means, so I don't like. I wanted to know what you meant by it.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I thought of Brian and I are plan you were gonna camp by on the beach, and I anticipate us like walking on the beach at the sunset. And so I
Mm,
was like thinking ahead
mm,
to something beautiful that I was looking forward to.
mm.
okay, is that what you meant by plan something?
Well, so there was the
It was the
something.
last one you
Yeah, it was
said.
plan something that might be challenging or difficult.
Yeah, that's what you said. And I was like, what do you mean plan something that would be challenging or difficult? I was like, why would I want to plan something challenging or difficult? Like, I didn't get what you meant.
I hear you. I think it was like plan for, like something like say you're about to go to, like, I don't know, do do a meditation on a podcast. You might want to plan for it with some notes.
Okay.
That
Well,
makes
I'm
sense.
just bringing it up
Right.
in case other people want to know what you meant.
I
That
hear.
that
Makes
one
sense.
reminded me of my Sylvia part that like plans for future things like very meticulously and goes over and over and over it and prepares like for it kind of thing, or
Mm,
analyzes this could happen, that could happen, we got to be prepared for that, but is very focused on the future and something that could go wrong kind of in the future.
mm. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
I must have a Sylvia part somewhere.
I do too. Yeah, I appreciated those questions. Have you ever left the present moment? Will you ever leave the present moment? Um, for me, the answers were no, and then maybe when I die. But
Mm. Ooh, interesting.
don't know. So, yeah. Um, oh, I liked how you were saying that the questions will be obvious to some parts, but that, essentially this creating this space is also an opportunity to give other parts like a chance to just explore these concepts and see what comes up. And I know that's like such a small thing, but I feel like that's important for especially the parts that maybe we lead with a lot
Hmm.
to kind of re- remember or be reminded that there are other parts that maybe don't know these things in the same way or haven't really considered them. Um, and then, yeah, I liked a lot of these questions. And let's see if I start anything. Oh, yeah, I noticed when you wanted us to switch from objects to sounds, I wanted to close my eyes.
Hmm.
I felt like I could focus on sounds better when I didn't have to also be seeing. But then at one point you were like, and now, be doing it all, or like, oh, so it was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It was like very calming when my eyes were closed. And then when I was also opening, I noticed like my system feels sensitive to taking in stimulation visually. Yeah. And then yes, similar to Christine, I had parts. Oh, well, first of all, I liked that you reminded us that parts have self energy because, yeah, that's just something I like to think about and remind people of too. Um, and then when we got into the qualities of self, I too had like strong, like I had parts come up. Like I was like, wait, whose definition is this? Like they were like determined, disciplined, principle. Like I starred the ones and said, wait, is he saying these? Like I actually was like, is he saying these are self energy, or is this gonna be like a oh, and that's these, and then this is self energy? Like I really was confused. But because similarly, I guess the way my parts interpret some of those words is like with there's an agenda behind them or something.
Hmm.
And so like yeah, I just had never really considered those words to be associated with self energy. Maybe like I've heard people say perseverance, which kind of is similar to determined, maybe like you keep going. And it's so funny because words are so, it seems like there's a clear definition, and then I feel like everyone has their own interpretation of them. And so, similar to Christine, I actually wrote all of these can happen performatively. Not all of them, but many of them. And like there was this, yeah, like it was especially like she named it, but I couldn't name it. And then when she named it, I was like, oh yeah, I did have a sense of something feels weird about remember trying to remember times I did that to others. But and I yeah, but I also just generally was like thinking about other people doing that to me too, like like when people do something with those some of these words like that in my direction. And I think that's also speaking to what I'm currently activated around as well. But I really like I too feel that I have to, the second you said or even maybe toward yourself, I was like that's the, to me that also feels like the main way I want to sort of sit with it because of this conditioning of my system to be kind and generous and like warm and this, and you didn't say warm, but accepting of others. And like I had parts like, where has accepting of others gotten me? Like, and that's just, um, yeah. And I also, um, I think my parts just need more time to think of things between things. So at some point, I was just decided to listen to the words you were saying, and I wasn't really able to recall memories because it was for my system, my parts are like, wait, I gotta really think. When did I, but it was a lot easier for me to think of times I felt inventive and expressive
Mm.
and silly and courageous and confident, um, actually. But yeah. So thank you. Lots came up.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing.
Mm,
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering the sort of male perception of some of those words versus the female, and how females have that sort of cultural burden to be kind and accepting. Well, my parts
mhm,
are like that's a new idea almost to some of my parts because it wasn't.
mm,
Um,
mm,
but yeah, and I appreciated like how how like deep or how like earnest your parts were, Hallie. Just sort of like trying each exercise out and seeing what
mm,
comes up, and yeah, it really feels good that they they were able to maybe feel a bit of presence, bit of awareness, especially given your current activation station.
mm,
Yeah, so I
mm.
appreciate them, and the ones who came in reminding you of stuff, they make so much sense. I know when
Yeah.
I do activation, or when I'm in an activated state, trying to do a meditation, it's just like it's
Yeah.
like you know I did it on video there. It's like you try to take a breath, and within a second, there's a part coming in with a memory or an emotion or a thought.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And I felt like those were really welcome, like because of how spacious that was and how many times you sort of kept saying, do if they want to do it, if they don't want to do it, if they, like that was, I think, just very special to have that many reminders. Yeah. So thank you.
thank you both for listening and providing wonderful comments and feedbacks, and yeah, it was a pleasure. My anxious part at the start isn't anxious anymore.
Yeah. How are you? Yeah. How are you feeling now that you've done it?
Yeah, good. Like I think and when I've done a couple of talks or talk and meditations in public, and I notice when I name that normally an anxious part to the I named it when I last did a talk, everything just sort of just relaxes because I think my parts have a sense that other people um might you know might have a perception of me that I have to be a certain way, but just being
Mhm.
honest about the anxious little 5 year old or wherever old he is, helping him be seen and heard,
Mhm.
um, helps helps other parts rest back, and that's just like cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that you named that too. And I immediately felt compassion and was just like sending self energy to
Mhm.
you. Like they love you, David. They really love you. You can't get it
Mhm.
wrong. Yeah. And I agree whenever I would do groups and there were times when I was feeling really anxious or I was having some kind of physical issue my parts were afraid of. And they found it really helpful to name it at the beginning and just say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Because my parts were afraid that that would sabotage me and nobody would understand what was happening to me. So we're like, this is the truth of how I'm feeling. Yes, I love that you named that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When
And I
you
did want to, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
you go
No, no,
first.
no. Oh, I was just gonna say when you named it, I had a part go, oh, I wish that I had said before we started, like, it's just I'm so grateful for you doing this. Like, don't, like, just know that there's so much gratitude. And I had this part wanting to tell him, like, you're doing great, you're doing great.
Oh,
But yeah,
I think my parts took in your self energy.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I had a very similar part come in that thought, oh, we often will do kind of a little self check-in of how we're doing, what parts are here before we start, and we didn't do that. So I was
Mhm.
just really grateful that David, you're your own primary caregiver and you did that for yourself anyway. So that was really great. And yeah, I was just going to say that if anyone's listening and they want to say how, what came up for them in the exercises, I don't know if there's a way to leave it on podcast. I know on YouTube you can leave it in the comments, but
Some apps
just
have comments.
yeah, just so
Comment
there's
section.
an opportunity to share what you thought. I agree with Hallie. I love David that it really, sometimes we can say, you cannot get it wrong. There's no right or wrong answer, but I really felt the genuineness
Mhm.
within you that there really was no agenda.
Mhm.
It really was an experiment.
Mhm.
So I love that.
Oh, I appreciate that so much, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. We appreciate you.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
Love
Oh, we love you
you.
too.
Aw.
Oh,
That a,
all right.
is that a
Well,
good place to stop?
thank, yeah. Thank you, David, and thank you everyone who followed along, and we look forward to being with you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
May you be kind to yourselves.
And all of your parts.
Until we meet again.
Yay. We did it.
Self led.